Mercedes could lose everything. The FIA has just opened a new investigation, after fresh engine data leaked from testing simulations. And this time, it's not rumors. It's numbers. Numbers that suggest Mercedes' 2026 engine gets stronger as it heats up to 15 extra horsepower, worth 0.3 per lap. That's not an upgrade. That's a championship advantage. And here's the scary part. This engine already passed inspection. It's already approved. And it's already on the grid. Now the FIA wants to know what happens when it's hot. If they prove internal expansion under race conditions, Mercedes could be forced to redesign the engine before the season even starts. No testing time. No backup plan. No margin for error. So the real question is simple. Did Mercedes outsmart the rulebook? Or did they cross a line that can't be defended? Because the answer to that could decide the entire future of Formula One. Everyone thought this engine was just clever, efficient, well-designed, technically legal. But now, teams are saying something else entirely. They're calling it a time bomb. Because the more data comes in, the more obvious it gets. This engine behaves differently when it gets hot. And that's not just smart design. That's a potential violation of the one thing every team agreed on: fair play. Here's the problem. The FIA's 2026 rules were crystal clear. Engines must stay under a 16:1 compression ratio. And Mercedes? They hit that number perfectly. But here's the twist. That ratio is measured at room temperature, not on track, not under stress, not in the heat of a race. And that's where everything changes. Because Mercedes allegedly engineered parts that expand under heat, just a fraction of a millimeter, but enough to push the real ratio closer to 18:1. That means more power, more combustion efficiency, more torque exactly when the car needs it most. And all of it is invisible during FIA inspection. It's a brilliant idea. But is it legal? That's the question teams started asking after reviewing BAHRAIN simulation data. Because the numbers didn't add up. Mercedes-powered cars were showing performance spikes only in high-temperature conditions, consistently, predictably, and only after extended running. Which points to one thing: heat-triggered engine behavior. Now Red Bull, Ferrari, and Audi are all sounding the alarm. They've seen enough to demand action. And this time, the FIA is listening. Because this isn't speculation anymore. This is backed by numbers. Thermal expansion models. Trackside sensor logs. Lap time deltas that no one can explain, except through this theory. And now that the investigation is open, Mercedes has to prove they didn't build the most unstoppable gray area engine in Formula One history. The moment the FIA confirmed the investigation, everything changed. Because for the first time, they're not testing the engine cold. They're testing it under race heat, simulating full load runs, replicating thermal stress, tracking what happens inside the combustion chamber when the engine is red hot and at max RPM. And what they're seeing is exactly what rival teams feared. Internal clearances are shifting, metal components are expanding, and compression values? They're climbing. Not wildly, not dramatically, but enough to matter. Because at this level, 0.5 millimeter of change can mean the difference between legal and dominant. Here's where it gets more serious. The FIA isn't just using one test method anymore. They've requested access to thermal simulation models. They've asked Mercedes for material profiles, supplier data, heat tolerance specs, even micro-expansion data under repeated heat cycling. This isn't routine. This is forensic. And the tone inside the paddock has shifted. Because the FIA isn't just investigating, they're looking for intent. If they find that the engine was deliberately designed to expand and push compression limits, even if it technically stays legal during scrutineering, that opens the door to something much bigger. Disqualification based on regulatory intent. And Mercedes knows it. They've gone quiet. No media answers. No performance claims. Just engineers, working overtime behind closed doors, trying to prepare a defense. Because if this goes to a hearing, they'll need to prove it's just a side effect, not a design. But rival teams aren't buying it. Red Bull's camp is already calling it an engineered exploit. Ferrari's engine lead reportedly described it as purpose-built elasticity. And Audi? They want a freeze. Right now. They've asked the FIA to halt homologation of all power units until this is resolved. Because if Mercedes gains this advantage for even one race, it's over. Mercedes isn't new to this game. They've been here before. They've fought protests, technical challenges, rule changes, and media pressure. But this feels different. Because this time, their engine is under direct attack. And not just from one rival. From all sides. Red Bull, Ferrari, Audi, even Aston Martin, their own customer, is asking questions behind closed doors. And now that the FIA is digging into thermal behavior, Mercedes knows what's coming next. A formal protest. Possibly during the first race weekend. And if that happens, they'll be dragged into a hearing. In front of FIA stewards. With public documents, team lawyers, expert testimony, and a global spotlight. So they're getting ready. Right now, behind the scenes, Mercedes' legal team is building their case. Word by word, line by line. They're preparing to prove that the engine meets every FIA regulation, that all measurements fall within tolerance, that any expansion is natural, not engineered, that there is no intent to bypass the rules. Because that word, intent, is what everything hinges on. If the FIA can prove that Mercedes designed this behavior on purpose and hid it behind cold testing loopholes, they can declare the engine illegal, even if it passed every inspection. But if Mercedes proves it's a natural heat response, that every team had the same chance to design around it, then the protest dies, and the engine stays. So this isn't just a technical fight, it's a philosophical one. What counts as legal innovation in Formula One? Where's the line between genius and exploitation? Between pushing the edge and crossing it? That's what the FIA will have to decide. And whatever they choose will echo through the sport for years. Because if they ban the engine, Mercedes may sue. If they allow it, the rest of the grid may revolt. And here's the final twist. Mercedes allegedly has internal documents showing early communication with the FIA. Design disclosures, technical queries, even thermal behavior notes. If those documents prove that the FIA saw and approved this expansion profile, then banning the engine now would expose the FIA itself. And they know it. Right now, every garage in the paddock is watching the same thing. The weather in Bahrain. Because if the forecasts hold, we're heading into one of the hottest preseason test sessions in recent memory. Track temperatures could hit over 45 degrees Celsius. And that's exactly what Mercedes wants. Because the hotter it gets, the more their engine shines. This is what makes Bahrain so dangerous. It's not a protest hearing. It's not a legal debate. It's raw data. Lap times. Sector speeds. Telemetry the public can see in real time. If Mercedes posts top speeds consistently across multiple teams, and those performance spikes line up with heat, then the theory becomes reality. And every protest suddenly has teeth. But here's the problem for the FIA. They can't stop the test. They can't delay the season. And they can't issue a ban without proof. That means Bahrain is more than just a warm-up. It's the tipping point. Because once the stopwatches start, it's no longer about intentions. It's about what's real and what's not. If Mercedes is only slightly ahead, maybe this fades. But if they dominate, if McLaren, Williams, and Alpine start clocking in 0.3 faster per lap, without upgrades, without setup tricks, then the questions will get louder. And the pressure on the FIA? Unbearable. And don't forget, once testing ends, the next stop is Melbourne. Round 1. Race weekend. Where any team can file a formal protest. Under FIA rules, that means a public hearing, official documents, technical briefings, and a final ruling before the lights go out. So the stakes in Bahrain are massive, because if the FIA doesn't act fast, they may be forced to rule during a live race weekend. And whatever they decide, ban it, approve it, delay it, someone's season is getting destroyed. If the FIA doesn't act in Bahrain, if they let Mercedes run the full test with this engine, knowing what's buried inside it, they're setting the stage for something far worse. Because once the cars land in Melbourne, it's no longer internal. It's official. Any team on the grid, Red Bull, Ferrari, Audi, even Aston Martin, can file a formal protest before qualifying. They can walk up to the stewards and say, that engine breaks the intent of the rules. We want a hearing. And if that happens, Formula One will enter a courtroom fight, in the middle of a race weekend, under cameras, with lawyers, with headlines. And that protest won't just be technical. It'll be political, philosophical, existential. Because the question at the center of it all isn't about parts, or measurements, or even horsepower. It's about trust. Can teams believe the FIA still controls this sport fairly? Or has Formula One become a game of who can outsmart the system before anyone notices? And here's the worst-case scenario. What if the FIA rules against Mercedes? After the race is run? What if a protest goes through post-race? Do they disqualify 4 teams? Do they erase results? Do they strip wins? That's what's at stake. And that's why insiders are calling this the biggest rules crisis since Spygate. Because in that scandal, it was secrets and sabotage. But this is something far more subtle. It's about engineering so advanced that the rulebook might not be able to catch it. And if that's the case, we're not just talking about one engine. We're talking about the future of Formula One itself. So now the pressure is fully on the FIA. They have to decide, fast. Do they shut it down? Do they rewrite the rules? Or do they let Mercedes run it and risk everything? Because one way or another, the truth is coming. On track, on paper, and maybe in court. And the season hasn't even started yet.